Hey, welcome to BNS About Movies. This is Sam. Hopefully you've seen the website, bnsaboutmovies.com. You can reach out to me at bnsaboutmovies@gmail.com. On the site, you'll also find our Ko-fi link if you'd like to contribute. It helps pay for the show. You don't have to do that. You can always rate us on whatever you're listening to as well. That would be awesome. 5 stars would be nice, but really whatever you think. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Anyway, this is the first of an experiment, a two-parter about Amityville and the movies that it inspired. There's some historical facts to get through in the beginning about Amityville because, trust me, the movies and really even the story of Amityville doesn't have that many facts to go with it. But what we do know is on November 13th, 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr. shot and killed 6 members of his family at 112 Ocean Avenue. The house is a large Dutch colonial located in a suburban neighborhood in, yes, Amityville, which if you're looking for, it's on the South Shore of Long Island, New York. He was convicted of second-degree murder in November of '75. The prosecution did allow that DeFeo was a user of heroin and LSD. He had an antisocial personality disorder and was well aware of his actions at the time of the crime. However, they also claimed that he killed his family in self-defense because he heard their voices plotting against him. Strangely enough, all of the victims were found face down in their beds with no sign of a struggle, and his rifle had no sound suppressor. They found no evidence of sedatives being used in the bodies, and police officers and the medical examiner who attended the scene were puzzled by both the speed and scale of the killings, before coming to the conclusion that maybe more than one person could have done them. Stranger still, reporters didn't hear or report any gunshots, and were only awakened by the sound of their dog, the family dog Shaggy's barking. DeFeo has changed his story numerous times over the year, even claiming that his sister Dawn and an unknown assailant committed some of the murders. He also stated that Dawn killed their father, and then their distraught mother killed all the siblings before he killed her. Why would he say this? Well, at the time, he took the blame because he was afraid to say anything negative about his mother to her father or his uncle Pete DeFeo, a capo in the Genovese crime family. His stories are so malleable that even the dates that he was married to his alibi ex-wife Geraldine Gates change. Regardless of the uncertainty of his guilt, not much, the next part of the truth is that in December of '75, George and Kathy Watts and their 3 children moved into the house, and 28 days later, they left. And here's where the story gets weird. Jay Anson had written several documentaries before his book, The Amityville Horror, which purports to tell the true, put that in quotes, story of what happened next. The house at 112 Ocean Avenue remained empty for 13 months after the DeFeo murders. Before the family purchased the house at the bargain price of $80,000, which is a steal even back then when you consider it was a 5-bedroom home. It had a swimming pool, a boathouse, and its distinctive gambrel roof. Plus, they also got $400 that they paid for the furniture that was left behind. George and Kathy Watts both owned their own homes, but wanted to start fresh with their new family, which included Daniel, Christopher, and Melissa, as well as a dog named Harry. Here's point 1 where the movie and reality diverge. During the first home inspection, the real estate broker did inform the family, the Watts family, of the murders, and they decided it was no problem. Father Ralph J. Pecoraro, referred to as Father Mancuso in the book, performed a blessing and claims to have heard a voice say "get out" when he threw the first drops of holy water. He didn't tell anyone until way after the movie came out. However, on Christmas Eve, 5 days after the Watts family moved in, the priest would call the family and warn them to stay out of the second floor where he had heard the mysterious voice, so it is claimed in the book. The call was cut short by bursts of static, and the priest developed stigmata, the wounds of Christ, on his hands. The only time that the priest ever spoke on this subject, again, was in a 1980 episode of In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. His face was darkened to help him maintain his anonymity. Before you know it, the spirits in the home made their presence felt. George began waking up at 3:15 every night, the time of the murders. Flies appeared in the middle of the winter. A small hidden red room that didn't appear in any blueprints would randomly appear and disappear. Missy developed an imaginary friend named Jody, which doesn't seem like a big deal, except that Jody was a demonic pig with glowing red eyes. Every crucifix in the house spun upside down, slime dripped down the walls, and bloody handprints showed up everywhere. There were no magic erasers back in this time, so this had to be a problem. On January 14, 1976, after 2 other attempts at blessing the houses, the Watts family left 112 Ocean Avenue, leaving all their possessions behind. The spirits even followed them for some time, so they decided to do what came naturally, and that was make some money. The book of their ordeal was written after Tam Mossman, editor at publishing house Prentice Hall, introduced the West family to Anson, who listened to 45 hours of tape-recorded recollections from them. So the book sold about 10 million copies, with multiple editions that subtly changed details, adding to the theory that it was all a bunch of malarkey. It became a cottage industry, with books appearing afterwards, such as John G. Jones' The Amityville Horror Part 2, Amityville The Final Chapter, Amityville The Evil Escapes, and Amityville The Horror Returns. Robin Carl also wrote Amityville The Nightmare Continues. Hans Holzer contributed Murder in Amityville, The Amityville Curse, and The Secret of Amityville. These books were all written with the contributions and blessing of DeFeo, who was recommended to work with Hans Holzer by his attorneys. Speaking of attorneys, at this point, lawsuits began. In May of '77, the West family filed against William Weber, the defense lawyer for DeFeo, who had recommended that he work with Holzer. Paul Hoffman, who was writing about the hauntings, clairvoyants Bernard Burton and Frederick Mars, plus Good Housekeeping magazine, the New York Sunday News, and the Hearst Corporation. All of them had published articles about their former home, and the charge was misappropriation of names for trade purposes, invasion of privacy, and mental distress. They asked for $4.5 million in damages. The Watts family got none of what they wanted, as Brooklyn U.S. District Court Judge Jack B. Weinstein ruled, based on what I've heard, it appears to me the large extent of the book is a work of fiction, relying in large part on the suggestions of Mr. Weber. The Washington Post had a huge article about the many lawsuits here that I'll link to in the show notes. Even worse, Weber would soon tell People magazine, "I know this book is a hoax. We created this story over many bottles of wine." However, none of this kept away the attention seekers or Hollywood away from Amityville. Where do the Warrens come in? Well, on the night of March 6, 1976, the house was investigated by the self-described demonologists and future stars of the Conjuring movies, along with a crew from Channel 5 New York and reporter Michael Linder of WNEW-FM. During the course of the investigations, a series of infrared time-lapse photographs showed a demonic boy with glowing eyes. And that's how The Conjuring 2 ends up being an Amityville movie. And it's just another way the Warrens stayed in the media and remained relevant for decades after people should have forgot them. Now keep in mind, no one saw this photo until George and Kathy Lutz appeared with Rod Steiger on the Merv Griffith show to promote the release of the first film. Yes, Hollywood had come a-calling. Enter producer Samuel Z. Arkoff and American International Pictures, one of my favorite companies ever. They purchased the rights to Anson's novel, and the writer did first pass for Sandor Stern, who also wrote the script and directed the Canadian film Pin that we already did on this show, finished the script. The film was originally intended to be a made-for-TV movie, makes sense, right? But it ended up being the most profitable independent movie since Halloween, and AIP's biggest success since The Born Losers. In fact, its grosses for an independent movie would not be eclipsed until 1990 with a little movie called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The first movie is, of course, the Amityville Horror. Let's get into it. Directed by Stuart Rosenberg, who also made Cool Hand Luke, Amityville Horror ended up being the second biggest movie of '79. And it's not a great movie, but it set up the traditions we've come to expect from the films: the demonic haunted house, the windows, blood dripping down the walls, ineffective priests, and a voice that has to yell, "Get out." The studio even tried to William Castle the media, taking them along with James Brolin and Margot Kidder to the actual 112 Ocean Avenue, and getting out stories that scary things were happening on the cursed set. Obviously, this tactic worked, because people could not get enough of the movie. Stephen King, in his book on Horror Dance Macabre, stated the real reason why the film was effective. True horror was understanding that you're a grown-up and adult problems suck. King would say the main reason people went to it, I think, beneath its ghost story exterior, is a financial demolition derby. Owning a home is a money pit, right? And how much worse does it get if demons get involved?
It's the kind of house they don't build anymore. A relic of a time when the world wasn't in such a hurry, when there was still time for a little charm and elegance. It has stood empty for a long while, and at the price, it is a bargain. For a growing young family, it is almost too good to be true.
What do you think?
I love it.
James Brolin, Margot Kidder, Rod Steiger in the Amityville Horror.
God's peace in this house. Get out. Get out.
Hello?
Hello, Kathy? Father Delaney, there's something very important.
Mommy, I want to go home.
What do you want from us?
What's so going on? We have to do something.
I'm coming apart! Oh, Mother of God, I'm coming apart!
28 days after the Lutz family moved into their dream house, they were running for their lives. What happened to them is an experience in terror you will never forget, and you will believe in the Amityville Horror. From the best-selling book that made millions believe in the unbelievable, the Amityville Horror.
At 7 years old in 1979, I can tell you that I was beyond terrified of the Amityville Horror. I put my hands over my ears and I screamed every time the commercial came on, as if the ghost could get through the TV. And keep in mind, Poltergeist was 3 years away. In the early morning hours of November 13th, 1974, as we said, Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered his entire family with a shotgun. A year later, the Lutz family, played by James Brolin and Margot Kidder, along with Casey Martell as Greg, Mino Pouche, who is the half-brother of Salil Moon Frye and was in Don't Go Near the Park and Explorers, plays Matt, and Amy, all move in, and quite literally, all hell breaks loose. Rod Steiger, Don Stroud, and John Larch play the priests who are ill-equipped to deal with whatever resides in the house. Yes, in the years since The Exorcist, the clergy has lost so much of its ability to stop the fallen angels and make walls bleed and turn nice dads like Bab's future hubby into axe-carrying madmen. Poor Rod Steiger. This Hollywood royalty had his forehead smeared with honey so that bugs would crawl all over it. Because the Amityville Horror had such a low budget, James Brolin took less money up front with the promise of 10% of the gross sales. He eventually received about $17 million, which would be adjust for inflation. It means he made about $60 million in today's money on this movie. If you don't think Satan pays off, let's talk to James Brolin, who complained that he didn't get another role for 2 years. Dude, you made $17 million in 1979. You'll be fine. You're also James Brolin. Ed and Lorraine Warren, those lovable carnies, were involved with the investigation of the real house and somehow turned it into the roles as the demonology advisors for Amityville 2, The Possession, which is a better movie than this one, and also the kind of wacky thing that only Anton LaVey could get away with. So let's talk about Amityville 2, The Possession, which I would say it's in the only official, there's only 3 to 4 official Amityville movies, unless we count the Canadian ones. This is one of the good ones.
The night of February 5th, 1976, George and Kathleen Lutz and their 3 children fled their home in Amityville, New York, and never returned. For them, the horror was over. Their living nightmare shocked audiences around the world in the Amityville Horror. But before them, another family lived in this house and were caught by the original evil. The Lutzes escaped with their lives, but the previous owners weren't so lucky.
Look at it! Oh, it's ours! Heavenly Father, bless our new home and watch over us as we become a part of
For
this
the Montelli family, it was their dream house until it turned into a nightmare.
Who there?
I'm scared.
What was in this house?
No.
What evil could drive their son to madness and destroy everything and everyone he loved?
Mommy!
Now, Amityville 2, The Possession. Amityville 2, The Possession.
It is the best one, actually. What am I saying? It doesn't matter if you think Amityville is truth or fiction. The truth is, it is the sequel to everything you want in a movie. If you love movies filled with horrifyingly sick moments of glee, Damiano Damiani, whose 60s and 70s Western and crime output were marked by a streak of social criticism, made in Italy, directed this film from a screenplay by Tommy Lee Wallace, who, as we all know, played Michael Myers in the original Halloween, and would go on to direct Halloween 3 Season of the Witch and the original version of It. This film is actually a prequel, telling the story of the Montanellis, they're the DeFeos. Anthony, Burt Young from Rocky, scummy as it gets, is the father of this brood. He's rude, ill-tempered, and ready to abuse everyone throughout the movie. If you're looking for any family values in this movie, in fact, any values at all, maybe watch another movie. His wife is Dolores, and she's played by the lovely Britannia Aldi. She's long-suffering and very Catholic. They have 4 kids, Sonny, Patricia, who is Diane Franklin, who is in Better Off Dead, TerrorVision, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Mark and Jan. Even from the very beginning of the film, the family is on edge, and every single interaction between them is marked by weirdness before we even get into the occult. Things get worse, so much worse, after a tunnel is found in the basement. This leads to doors knocking all night long and demonic messages showing up in the youngest kids' rooms. Turning to the church, Dolores tries to have Father Frank Adamski bless the house. This lasts for 10 seconds before Anthony flips out and tosses out the priest. When he gets to the car, the door is open, the Bible is torn apart, and clearly all is not well. Again, let's just keep in mind this family is a mess before the devil or demons or wherever gets involved. Dad is overly strict and abusive. Mom clings to the church, and Sonny and Patricia yearn to have sex with one another. Seriously, their interactions are beyond creepy, even before the demons. Again, I know I keep saying this. While everyone goes to church, Sonny stays behind and is overtaken by the demonic force. The film nearly descends into body horror as we see the creature take root inside him. Soon he decides to play fashion photographer with his sister, a game that quickly turns into sex. If you think Pornhub invented incest, let me introduce you to Italian films. Let me introduce you to 1980s horror films.
They're mine. My panties.
I took them from the laundry.
Patricia is not upset. She tells him he loves it. These are the 2 main protagonists of our story. Flowers of the Attic was big at this time. Who can say? As Sonny becomes more demonic, Patricia decides to confess to Father Adamski, but breaks down before she can. At his birthday party, a scene where this film begins to go somehow even more insane, he goes full demon as she freely tries to give herself to him. Then she decides to call the priest and confess everything but Father Tom. Father Tom is, of course, Andrew Prine, Simon himself from Simon, King of the Witches, as well as coming from the original version of The Town That Dreaded Sundown and way more movies. Anyway, the priests are all going skiing, so instead of listening to the girl, he takes the phone off the hook. This is the most anti-Catholic movie ever. That night, Sonny becomes fully possessed and murders the entire family with shotgun blasts as a voice tells him to kill them all. Father Adamski blames himself, and even after the church refuses to allow him to exorcise the demon, he still makes an attempt on his own. I think he even goes from Sonny into his soul. Amityville House is put up for sale. And then we come to part 1. It's kind of like Rogue One, how it ended with Star Wars. If you think this is a rough little movie, it was even worse in the original cut. Supposedly, test audiences were assaulted by scenes where Anthony anally rapes his wife, where the incest is on graphic display versus being hinted at. Damiano states that he really wanted to upset viewers. Well, he succeeded.
I think Mommy doesn't want to make love to Daddy anymore. I think he tries to force her.
Originally, this was going to be based on John J. Jones's book, but Dino De Laurentiis, in association with AIP, decided to be inspired by Murder in Amityville by Hans Holzer. George Lutz, whose 28-day residency at the house led to the original film, sued and got a disclaimer on the posters for the film saying that this film has no affiliation with George and Kathy Lutz. Even better, Ed and Lorraine Warren, as we already talked about, were the demonology advisors. How did they feel about the tremendous amount of blasphemy on display in every scene of this movie? No traditional structure can save anyone. The family unit is a joke. The Catholic Church does not care. And police only exist to pick up the pieces at the end. It's a grimy, gross little film that has more in common with the Grindhouse than its major studio origins would suggest. Long story short, I love this movie. It's my favorite Amityville movie. I've gone on record many, many times of just saying how much I dig it. The last one that I'll talk about that I think you can kind of consider somewhat a classier Amityville is one of the Canadian ones, Amityville It's About Time from 1992.
Wow, it's
Creepy.
unique.
I like it.
Are you sure you don't want to spend the night?
I hate having regret for breakfast. What? So what? Evil.
This company was breaking ground on a new development. Where? New York. Long Island, actually. I think it's called Amityville Manors.
Amityville. Dad! Somebody open the door! You remember Leonard?
Yeah, I heard about your leg.
This is the real thing.
Don't lie to me.
If there's any other trouble I will have, Jake admitted like that.
We would only move for one reason. Where it was safe is no longer. It must find a new home.
Well, somehow Jacob is behind all this. Now, I don't know if it's a case of parapsychological projection.
There's no sense in looking for it. See, I think it's inside of us. It's trying to make this house its home.
You guys have a relationship, okay? I'm not part of that.
What the hell is happening here?
It's got nothing to do with hell, Andrea.
What are you talking about?
Hold still.
Come.
There's somebody here.
This is about power. I love you.
All aboard.
You won't regret this, I swear.
You might.
Director Tony Randall produced New World Pictures reworking The Return of Godzilla into the US version, Godzilla 85, and he directed DEFCON 4, which had great box art, before his big break, directing Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. He was also behind the live-action Fist of the North Star. Along with Amityville The Evil Escapes, this movie is loosely based on the short stories in Amityville The Evil Escapes by John G. Jones. Producer and co-screenwriter Christopher DeFerry became confused by some of the inconsistencies in Jones' story, so he called him to get answers. Jones told him, "Yep, Chris, that's the way evil is. It's just unpredictable." Unlike many of the films with Amityville in the title, this one at least tries to be canon, bringing up the fact that the house blew up real good at the end of Amityville 3D. Jacob Sterling, who's Stephen Mock from the Monster Squad, is an architect who has just returned home from a business trip to Amityville. And he brought back a cursed clock that he fell in love with that once belonged to the evil house. And there's our connection. We don't even have to be in the Amityville house. Meanwhile, Sean Weatherly from Baywatch plays his ex-girlfriend, Andrea Livingston, who somehow is still watching his two teenage kids. Lisa is played by Megan Ward from Trancers 2 and 3, Oh Hell Canada, and Rusty, Damon Martin from Ghoulies 2. Well, the clock kicks in pretty much right away, randomly transforming the living room into a torture chamber, and influencing a neighborhood dog named Peaches into mauling Jacob's leg. There's also an incredibly sweaty sex scene between Jacob and Andrea. Because look, you get Sean Weatherly in a movie, it's direct video, it's the 90s, we got foreign investors, you know how it goes. It is very sweaty. Also, Nita Talbot, who is Maria on Hogan's Heroes, shows up as a neighbor. She was in a wealth of horror films like Island Claws, Frightmare, the Norman Thaddeus Vane one, the Peter Walker version, Chained Heat, and Puppet Master 2. All hell breaks loose. Peaches the dog is killed. Her blood is used to smear anti-Jewish symbols all over her owner's house. Lisa and Jacob are possessed by the clock. Rusty and Andre become the heroes in a film that seems not to know its protagonist should be, and a trick ending that allows a character to scream the title of the movie, which delights me to no end, and hey yeah, Dick Miller cameo. And you have an incredibly perfect waste of your time. I mean, you have to love any movie that sometimes, in some cuts, has a black box over 1992 in its opening titles, because this originally was called Amityville 1992, It's About Time, back when it was all the rage to put the year that you made your movie in your movies. You can get this from Vinegar Syndrome. It's also on a lot of streaming platforms. Anyway, these are the good Amityville movies. Come back next week, and oh boy, we got some bad Amityville movies, and I'll get into them. We'll go deep into them. Deep into Amityville. Deeper than you ever wanted to go. Sam from BNS Bump Movies, thanks for listening.